As you know, my name's Eric Eisenhower. I'm sitting in for Jay Pimpare, our chairman, who is not available or was not expected to be available tonight. So I'll be running the meeting. Good evening. I would like to call to order the Town of Cohasset Conservation Meeting. Today is September 17th, 2020. The time is 6:30 and we are holding the meeting remotely via Zoom platform. In attendance this evening is Angela Giso, our Conservation Administrator, Jeff Summers, our Conservation Agent, and the following commissioners. And I'll go through our names in alphabetical order. Since the meeting will be conducted remotely, we will do all votes by roll call in alphabetical order. After I call your name, please say present. Kathleen Berrigan.
Oh, muted.
You're muted, Kathleen. We want to hear from you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Present, Kathy Berrigan.
Okay, Eric Eisenhower, present. Trish Grady.
Trish Grady, present.
Chris McFarland.
Chris McFarland, present.
Jay Pimpare.
Jay Pimpare, present.
James Roseback. Don't see him. He's not here. Okay. Marianne Weatherald.
Present.
Okay, so we have a quorum of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A quorum of 6 tonight. So we have more than enough to do our legitimate voting. Our chairman, Jay Pimpare, may not be here throughout the evening, so he'll advise us if for some reason he has to leave. If anyone in the audience listening in would like to address any applications, they need to do so via the chat box on their computer. Our agent will be monitoring the questions during this meeting. The first item of business is Notice of Intent 20-19, Stormwater Permit 20-26 by Michael Marchetti, and I will read the application into the public notice. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 17th, 2020 at 6:30 via remote participation on a Zoom platform for an amended order of conditions for Notice of Intent 2019 and Stormwater 2026, proposed work to construct a mixed-use sports court with a stone fire pit in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland at 76 Lamberts Lane by the applicant, Michael Marchetti. Okay. Jeff, is there anything else you would like to add at this stage?
No, not at this time. Not just yet.
Okay. We invite anybody on behalf of the applicant to come forward and make their presentation, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Please introduce yourself so we know who we're talking to.
Okay, for the record, Steve Giosa with SciTech Engineering, and I am representing Mr. Marchetti this evening. With me tonight is Carol Lamb, who is the landscape architect for the project. This is, as was read into the record, a request for a order of conditions to allow work within the buffer zone for the construction of a sport court and fire pit, and then some elevated planting beds and associated landscaping along the perimeters of the work area. I don't know if the chairman wants me to try and share my screen. It sounds like there might be an issue with that, but if you want me to attempt it, I can.
Jeff, what do you think? Can we do that?
Yeah, Steve, if you can, go ahead. If not, then I have some the site plans that I think I can put up on mine, so we can look at that.
Okay, so it still has the host disabled my screen saving at the moment.
All right, let me do this then. Did you want to just see the site plan?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I think we can get through the overall description of the project from that.
Okay, let me see here. Okay.
Okay.
Can everybody see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so for orientation, north is to the top of the exhibit that you have before you. You see a little to the lower and left side, the existing dwelling, 76 Lamberts. Behind the house is the deck a little arbor area, and then the existing pool and associated patio area. And this area is an existing lawned area behind the dwelling. On the right side of the drawing, you'll notice that there is a identified bordering vegetated wetland that has been mapped on the site. And that was mapped by Christopher Capone. Christopher is a wetland scientist. He also happens to be the conservation agent for the town of Westport, Massachusetts. So Chris went out, did the delineation of that particular resource area. And you'll see the other significant features on the property, the topography. There are a number of ledge outcroppings, as you might expect, in this area, and those are depicted on the plan. And then we have the 2 buffer zone lines also depicted. We have the inner 50-foot zone as being highlighted there. And then beyond that, the 100-foot buffer zone line extending in that general location. So the eastern edge of the site is within the buffer zone. The balance of the property is not within a buffer zone area. And Jeff, I don't know whether you can get to the proposed plan if you have that queued up. There we go. So same orientation on the drawing. In this case, we have the sport court, which is and tennis court. It's a kind of a combination athletic court located on the right there on the property. As you can see, it'll be a fenced-in court, asphalt surface. And then immediately to the south of that, the applicant has a proposed sitting area, block paver patio area with an associated fire pit. And then continuing a little bit further south, they're looking to construct some elevated or raised garden beds, and then a small shed located just to the east or to the right of the raised beds. Associated with the improvements to the property, there are solar panels, and they didn't show up on the original plan, but if you look right in that area just to the north of the pool, there were solar panels recently installed on the property. Those are outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, but they are depicted on this particular drawing because they help identify the placement of the sport court for this particular application. So you'll notice this is a buffer zone project or a proposed buffer zone project. In setting the sport court in the sitting area in this location, we did look at alternative points on the property. Initially, just to the north of the solar panels, we looked at that area, but there's a large ledge outcropping, and any construction in that area would be very disruptive to the natural environment in this location, require extensive blasting. When we look to the west side of the pool house, you can see the topography drops dramatically in that area. So we think we have an erosion issue and a potential for significant grade change work in that area, which we think would be much more disruptive to the natural environment on this particular property. So it brings us back to where we are proposing the sport court and the pit area, the sitting area, the fire pit and sitting area. There is, and I didn't mention this in the original part of the presentation, there is a restricted wildlife habitat protection easement. This was created back in the 90s. It extends, there were a number of these created on the starting parcel that all of this land was subdivided from. And these restricted areas are pocketed along the original parcel. I think Mr. Wills was the original owner of the land, created these conservation restriction areas that the commission has control over. And so we've aligned the work to be just outside of that particular area. The point on the topography.
Steve, well, while you're on that, and looking at your diagram here, on the top, on the right-hand side, you have wildlife habitat protection easement and a
Yes.
squiggly line to the left and the right. Where is the left side end of the wildlife habitat?
Right along the edge of the limit of work. So
Okay,
right where
fine.
we're proposing to install the silt fence would be the edge of the easement area.
Okay,
So We positioned this in this area here primarily because of the topographic features. It allows us to avoid the ledge outcroppings. It allows us to construct the different features here with very minimal grade changes to the property, so the least disruption to the natural topography and landscape. And we thought it would be an ideal spot to position this where it would have no impact on the resource area itself, and at the same time provide the amenity that the owners are looking for here. In evaluating the tennis court and the other improvements to the property, we did do a stormwater evaluation. We looked at stormwater runoff. As you might expect, the ledge outcroppings and the soil conditions here are not ideal. They are D-class soils under the hydrologic soil groupings. So with a D-class soil, you have a natural high runoff coefficient for existing conditions that exist. So we did do a comparison of existing and proposed runoff. And for mitigation, because it really is a relatively minor activity, we did propose, or we do propose, to put a perimeter crushed stone trench. You're really not going to get a lot of recharge, but it is going to give us the maximum feasible recharge capability, which is what the DEP regulations mandate for D-class soils. They understand under the regulations that these types of soils are not conducive to massive underground recharge systems. You're really just throwing money away doing that. But this allowed us to buffer the flow from the sport court, so we don't have an unrestricted overflow. It also allowed us to create kind of a drip edge as opposed to a focused one-point discharge for the stormwater runoff, so that this is a level crushed stone system that would allow, when it does overtop during a significant event, basically a modest overflow that's along a very level line, as opposed to a pipe discharge, for instance, down to the resource area. So the balance and the drainage, we believe we've analyzed correctly in that regard. And then we've got the activity on the property that at this point with the proposal before you does include a very small portion of the work to extend into the inner 50-foot zone. Right in that area there, it's a small portion of the sport court and then a little bit of the grassed or landscaped area just to the south of the sport court. That represents about 150 square feet of land area. And at its closest point, we would be 42 feet from that little point in the wetlands at the wetland flag as indicated. So we do look at that as a minor encroachment into the inner 50 feet. We think that the natural conditions of the property kind of dictate where we have placed these features or these proposed elements on the property that would allow us to construct them with the least disruption of the natural topography and soils of the overall parcel. So even though there's a little bit of activity in the 150, in the 50-foot zone, we think that the offset of less earth movement and construction activity in other areas of the site give us a net benefit in that regard that hopefully the board or the commission feels comfortable with allowing that particular variance to move forward. Excuse me. I know that one of the neighbors to the property, I think the neighbor immediately to the north, has submitted some comments and questions, and I might, try and attempt to answer some of those to at least get them into the initial presentation. They asked a question about the 100-foot buffer zone and the 50-foot buffer zone. Those lines are measured from the resource area, and they are to scale at 50 feet and 100 feet, and they follow a kind of a radial pattern from the peak points. And then, so we are depicting the line as it exists, measured from the bordering vegetated wetland line. So I think that was one of the questions they had. One of the other questions was whether or not activities in the buffer zone, what falls under the commission's jurisdictions. Well, clearly everything that we're depicting does fall in your jurisdiction because we are making it part of the application. Most of the work, I would say 75% of the work is within the 100-foot buffer zone. So those are the areas that are within your jurisdiction and would be covered under, in order of conditions, if the commission deems the project appropriate. There was a question about doing construction activity close to the conservation restriction line. Again, I'll go back to the original part of the presentation. We selected this area because it gives us the opportunity to have the least amount of grade alteration. So our excavation and our filling area is really very minor, and we believe that the contractor, with the correct equipment out here, you're not going to go in here on these edge points and use large equipment, but you'll be able to do this work with smaller equipment and get the trenching and the work needed to put the perimeter trench in place and not impact the designated wildlife habitat area. There was a question about lighting and whether or not the lighting would meet the town bylaw. Clearly, the applicant would have to meet the town bylaw unless they went to the Zoning Board of Appeals to seek relief from the zoning for the illumination levels. Not specifically a conservation matter, but it was brought up as a question. So we did want to make note that there would be full compliance with the local zoning bylaw relative to lighting. I touched on drainage calculations and our analysis in that regard. And then finally, there was a question about noise levels. And again, as you might know, the noise levels have a potential impact on wildlife, but what you're looking at here is not a commercial operation. This is a residential, a single family residential amenity to the property, no different than the pool area you see here. The level of noise and activity in terms of its impact on the surrounding area is no more than the activity that you already see there with the house, typical parties in the backyard or activities near the pool area. So again, we don't see this as being a activity that's going to materially change sound levels as they may impact the surrounding environment. So with those points, there is a landscaping plan. I don't know whether, Jeff, you have the ability to display that. And
Yeah, it's in here somewhere.
okay.
Um,
Okay, so the planting plan covers a number of areas. We can start there. That we've got the area to the north of the tennis court that has been designated for plantings along the border to create a buffer to our northerly abutter, who again raised these concerns. You'll see adjacent to the solar panels, planting bed being created in that area there. Some extensive buffer plantings in that location. And then as we continue down to the sitting area, which is really more in the buffer zone, you'll see the extent of plantings that have been designated here. I'm going to defer to our landscape architect to maybe describe a little better detail what types of plantings are being proposed here. And I think I can turn that part over to her. And then if we'll be happy to answer questions after she gives you a brief explanation of that element of the project.
Sure, thanks for the introduction. So my name is Kara. I'm a landscape architect with Skyline Landscapes. In terms of the planting that was selected, I've used as many native trees and shrubs as possible in place of ornamentals on this property. So for example, along the edge of the border to the wildlife easement, I've designated inkberry hollies. These are native shrubs and great for wet conditions. Along most of the foundation and also the north of the court, the trees selected north of the court and the solar panels, most of these should be native. There were a few non-natives, and I think those might have been preferred by the client. But in general, I have selected as many native plants as possible, and we can also add more to this project.
All right, we have a list of native plants which we would like you to conform to. Have you received that list?
Yes, Jeff sent it to me yesterday.
All right.
I'm happy to use that list moving forward.
Yeah, it's quite extensive. I think there's more than enough choice.
Sure. Are there any questions regarding the plants? I feel like the planting plan is very straightforward. I have screen planting and foundation plants as was requested by the client.
Yeah.
So if we needed to add more native plants to the project, I'm happy to do so.
I think as we go through the discussion, we may make changes to this plan, in which case that will require you to redo your planting plan, Cara. So I
Absolutely.
think it's probably not worth our while to go through all the details at this stage of your planting plan, but maybe to return at a time in the future, okay?
No problem.
All right. Jeff, do you want to give your thoughts on this, please?
Yeah, so, the plan kind of on its face appears relatively straightforward, but I think it's a little more complicated than that. So there's a couple issues. So, I think, I'm obviously not a voting commission member, but I'm sure if we were to poll the commission, I think that, this work here in the 50-foot buffer zone would not be viewed favorable. My suggestion, a couple of weeks ago, I emailed Allison. I can't remember her last name, Steve. I thought Allison was the engineer on the project, but I said she may want to think about moving this out of the buffer zone. And it's not for me to say; it's actually for the commissioners to say that. But I think this is going to be a serious dam on the project, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then another issue too is with the stormwater permit is the rates and volumes in the stormwater management summary actually show slight increases post-development of volume and rate of water leaving the property, where actually the standard in the stormwater management bylaw is equal to or less than. So if this stone trench can be in increased capacity to bring those numbers down to equal to or less than, that's another suggestion. And then also, when I visited the site the other day, I was kind of surprised to see that the entire buffer zone area was pretty much obliterated of vegetation. Here's a photo of what it actually looks like as of Tuesday. The site plan basically shows the 100-foot buffer zone kind of running down along this fence. So, everything in here is in the buffer zone. All this vegetation removed. I understand there was a rock or ledge that was broken up, and I'm assuming material brought in to form this, what looks like a dirt road. None of that was permitted at this time. So going out there, I would actually like to go out again at some point, view this property with the 50-foot buffer zone, the 100-foot buffer zone, clearly staked out, and the four corners of where the proposed court is to be located. And then also I saw the stakes for the easement, the wildlife easement. I would just like to see everything in the field. I think we could, if we all went out there, have a look, I think that would give us a better sense of the scope of this project. I also imagine that, the commission will, if whatever is approved with this project, I imagine that whatever area in the buffer zone that has been cleared here will be required to be robustly revegetated. So that was, when I spoke with Kara the other day, I said, you might want to hold off on this planting plan because it's going to change, I imagine. So those are the first things that jumped out at me. I'd also like to understand more of, what exactly was in the buffer zone as far as vegetation, what was removed, how many trees were removed, what type of work was done, and when it was done. I think just so we can have a better understanding of why this is as it is now, being at, because this is, this is the existing conditions. The existing conditions, on the site plan, everything that was sent to us showed this as being wooded, and that's not what we're seeing here. Here's another view from you can see the solar panel up here in the corner. So this is another view looking south. All this being in the buffer zone. I understand this is where the court is proposed to go, but I think we need to have some explanation as to why this is the condition that it is in today.
Anything else, Jeff?
I'm sure I'll think of something, but no, not at the moment.
I was down there today. I'm going to talk to you, Steve, because I think you're in charge of the project. I have never seen a devastation of a buffer zone as bad as this one in my entire time on the Conservation Commission. It looks like a moonscape. It's unauthorized. It's unregulated. I don't know why you did it, but before I go any further with this commission, I want an explanation from somebody as to how you can clear cut a buffer zone and then expect us are going to look favorably upon a project to build your recreational facility. So let's start with an explanation as to what's going on here and why that was done. Steve.
Okay, so I think Jeff pointed out that our existing conditions plan does depict a tree line that is different than what is out there today. So when we did our original work and our original survey, the tree line is as represented on our plan. So our involvement in the project at that point was to identify these physical features. We did that. That's when we had the survey of the wetland line completed, so we could depict that on the plans. My understanding is, and I again was not involved in this, but I think that the construction of the solar panels, the solar company, I believe, may have gone, obviously, not may have, they went obviously beyond any point of authorized clearing that the commission would be comfortable with or we would be comfortable with. So I don't have an excuse for you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you that activities in the buffer zone require commission approval. I think in this case, it was a misunderstanding as to where the buffer zone was measured from by the original contractor. My understanding is they felt that in looking at the GIS mapping, that was good enough to determine where wetlands were and where the 100-foot buffer zone was. Again, I'm not trying to excuse the contractor. I can't make excuses when there's a clear violation. Excuse me. So I think that is the explanation. I know it's not a good explanation, but it is what I guess the history of our involvement and then what we have observed. We were not out there during the construction period, and maybe that's a mistake that we should have probably been involved, so we could have directed them. If we had been out there before the clearing, we would have advised them to measure the 100 feet, go 120 feet and stop there. That's, I think, how we got to today's conditions out there, is that it was an inadvertent overstepping by the solar contractors. And I don't have a good excuse for that
It's
either.
very clear, Steve, you're in violation of the wildlife easement. You're in violation of the wetland regulations, all right? You're kind of spitting in the wind, as they say. And now you're coming back and you're asking us to, allow all this to take place. I mean, we have the option here of making you replicate all of this before you begin any more work, which is replant all the trees that you've taken out. Replicate, I'm not saying it's a wise thing to do, but that's within the realm of possibility here. So I think we're talking here about some fairly serious issues. And maybe Mr. Marchetti would like to add his words to it. I'm not sure. You don't have to, all right? But we're trying to get some understanding here, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's probably all my fault at this point. I was looking at plot plans between my first time doing anything like this.
Could you speak louder, please? Maybe turn your volume up? Thank you.
How about that? Is that better?
A bit better, yeah.
All right. No, I've never done any of this in any town, so I know clue about the process, had the plot plan out, and saw some flood zones that was further off with my neighbor, and didn't see anything designated. Actually, Jeff and I walked the property probably March, something like that. And he was pointing out the area over there, and that might be something to be concerned about. But we were talking about building the solar array, and that a road for this large equipment, well, something for the large equipment to pass would be good for them. So then I was the one who had the stone brought in for the large equipment. Then, you know, there was some ledge that had to be cleared. The solar company they were a little bit difficult to work with in terms of getting what we needed. So they wanted some flat ground, basically. So that's why that whole area is like that. There were some trees, I don't know how. I was a biology major, but they grew literally on top of rocks. The pine trees are 80 feet tall. So it was,
There are lots of those in Cohasset.
yeah. And then a couple of the windy storms we took down a bunch that were probably buffered by some of the ones on the perimeter, would be my guess, is that, you know, they grew up and protected. So there was a chunk along that line, I'd probably say, I don't know, 8 decent sized trees, one that was right on the corner of that area that, well, was coming towards the house and then swayed finally away from it. This whole thing is probably definitely me, not Jeff and I. He was very helpful. I went back and forth. He helped me get the easement copy. But I never had him come back out. And in my mind, I was thinking flood zone is different than that, what ends up being a small body of water or vernal pool, or I'm not sure the definition. So then Site Tech came out after, well, for the vegetation part, it was kind of 2 stages. So they had done the property lines and all that. And so then we put the solar in and all the crushed stone. So we're trying to not backtrack into plans, but definitely very inadvertent, no knowledge of flood zone versus wetlands. Like in my mind, that wasn't wetland because it wasn't on the plot plan. You know, the big fold out thing that has all your neighbors.
Yep.
So I'll take the hit on this one.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments you have? I'd certainly like to hear them.
Well, you know, I mentioned to Jeff earlier in the week, this is Chris McFarland. I mentioned to Jeff early in the week that part of any application is an existing vegetation plan and then a tree removal plan. Now, obviously the tree removal's already taken place. We do have, or the project engineer does have things like Google Earth to go back to. You can see that there's quite a bit of wood on site, which gives you a little indication of what trees have been removed. I think it's important, if only as a kind of a some sort of a working document that we can try to come to a consensus on what we think was the violation out there, and then to be able to look at that as part of the overall project. Had this project been permitted properly, then starting at the pool fence, there would have been a survey that said what trees are there, which ones were expected to be removed within the buffer zone, and then how that mitigation would kind of, or what mitigation would be proposed in order to make up for that. So I think it's I think it's necessary that some sort of a plan needs to be developed that suggests what kind of a best guess estimate at what was there based from, like I said, from Google Earth and the different satellite imagery that you can look at. And hopefully we can get some kind of a plan that can give us a little indication of what's really being proposed, because what's being proposed now is quite different than what would be proposed had this gone through the normal channels. And so we can look at it more holistically if something like that was provided for us.
Chris, would you say that if we were to survey the untouched forest to the side of the dugout area and just say, chances are it looked like this, and measure the density and the size of the trees that exist there not untouched, that would probably be a good point of departure, I would think.
I would caution that. If you look at the photographs, what you'll see is the photographs that are provided with the application. You'll notice there's much larger trees immediately adjacent to the road, which have been cut down, as opposed to some of the standing trees, which are just feet further into the property. And of course, that's because edges of forest get much more light, and therefore the tree growth is much greater. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably not the immediately adjacent forest that you want to look at, but probably the forest either to the north or to the south, which hasn't been disturbed, and that would give you a better indication of what might have been there.
Okay.
But that, along with the photography, the satellite photography, which is available, that could give us a better indication of what we are actually looking at as an overall project. You're muted, Jeff.
Anyone else?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say something. Dr. Marchetti, I wonder if, I'm sure the tree company was happy to charge you as much as they could. So I wonder if they have an invoice or something that would help with this process of how many trees they removed. I don't know if that's something you would have, but that might be helpful if they provided that.
Yeah, it was lumped in together. Some of it was like, in talking with my neighbor, we had one extremely large, completely dead tree that was probably 20 feet from our house, right on the edge of our property. So a few of those were taken down so they didn't kind of crush our house. And some of the wood, actually a lot of the wood, was some of the dead trees. And we've been in discussion kind of throughout this, even leading up to this. There are a few more that are either completely dead, just completely bare, stripped, no leaves, and then a few others that are mostly dead.
Yeah.
A chunk of that border area, especially to the north, was a lot of that. We put some evergreens in, I keep asking her what the back of the solar doesn't look as nice as the front, what I get to see. So trying to ask her where to place these, but we've had to make pockets in the ledge to put enough dirt and lines to just get a bunch of the evergreens back there. There's probably 14 back there now, with some room for some more. So some of the trees, especially north, there's a large section of dead ones. I've looked at the Google Earth, and some of the trees with leaves, they definitely hide the dead ones. But I probably have some pictures north and east with some of the trees there, or all of them.
Because if you tour the property, Mr. Marchetti, on the right-hand side, you have the existing tree line now, but you'll see those branches have been cut off to 10 or 15 feet high. And then the smaller growth inside, going another 20 or 30 feet, has also been eliminated and cleared out.
Yeah, I didn't.
There's very little small, what I would call 2-3 foot growth within the existing pile of trees that you have there. So on the right-hand side, as you look at the photos.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because the branches on the pine trees, those are all the dead ones from, I
Okay.
knocked them, that was me. Just completely dead ones, so it wasn't live branches on the trees.
It looks like there's a trail when I walked your property today. Do a lot of people go on that trail to go to the wildlife habitat protection area? Do you see people walking through it, enjoying all the trees and the area?
Yeah, I bought the house in 14 and that
Mhm.
trail was there, and that's honestly a lot, the deer and the coy wolves and turkeys and what have you. But yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time walking back there. So it's not a people path per se. It's
Mhm. But it's an easement, there's a path there for people to enjoy the wildlife area
yeah, that's
near
not,
the woodpile. It
there's a
looks like. It's just devastating to go there today, just to look at a project that on paper looks like you plan to do this, but when it's already done, you've already cleared it. I mean, there's a lot to be requested here that you want a variance. I really dislike projects that come before us that ask for a variance after they do the work. So I think we're going to have to do a lot of rehaul on this one.
Yeah, this is Jay Pimpari. I want to chime in here and say, first off, I completely agree with your comments, Marianne. I agree with the comments from the chair, our conservation agent from the get-go, and Chris McFarland's comments about existing versus proposed vegetation. I think that there's a lot of work to be done here on this project before the commission can even remotely begin to entertain getting into the details. And there are, I believe, some fatal flaws with this project, which I'll get into in a minute here. But I think at the very least, what should be done moving forward is to, as Chris McFarland had recommended, is for the applicant to go out and do a full survey and provide this commission with a pre-existing plan versus what is actually out there now. And when I mean pre-existing, going back 6 months, a year, whatever it was prior to the clear cutting of the land, it's very obvious by looking at Google Earth that this was a completely vegetated area. All the work that was done within the 100-foot buffer zone. As the engineer knows, that requires a permit in a notice of intent filing with the state of Massachusetts, and should have been before this commission. This commission, as stated again, does have the jurisdiction here and the responsibility to potentially even issue an enforcement action against the applicant, which I would like to circle back to for the violations that have occurred. I think that what also needs to be done here is, as our agent has mapped out, is a full staking out of the entire property. Staking out of the entire 50-foot buffer zone, 50-foot buffer line that exists today, the 100-foot buffer that exists today, the four corners of the edge of the tennis courts, along with, most importantly, the wildlife easement. And I think that at bare minimum needs to be done. I'm extremely concerned about the work that's done in the 50-foot buffer zone. I don't agree with the rationale for the variance request. I think that I would have to respectfully disagree with the engineer on your assumption that there is a net benefit as a result of granting a variance here. Not only do I see a disturbance in the 50-foot buffer zone, but I see a clear disturbance in the wildlife habitat easement. And I won't go and read the wildlife habitat easement. You have that in front of you. Clearly, items 1 through 4 specifically talk about no removal, no excavation, no fill, etc. And as has been pointed out, it's virtually impossible to go down a line, even with small equipment. We've heard this story before. Bringing in small equipment and conditioning the project would allow minimum disturbance of that easement. as you've seen, we've seen catastrophic removal of vegetation out there. And I don't believe that small equipment is going to not encroach upon that easement. You're going to need, I'll just throw some numbers out there, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 feet of a buffer between the edge of the tennis court or the wall that's going to be built there and the wildlife easement. So all that work is specifically prohibited. You know, again, going back to the stormwater permit, I've been on this commission for 7 years now. I've never seen an application come in where the stormwater numbers, the rates of flow are actually increased on a project. The sole objective of our stormwater bylaws is to make the stormwater flow either equal to or less than. Every engineer that comes in reduces the flow. So, I mean, this project could never be approved as is right now. And I think there is substantial work that needs to be done. I have a lot more comments on some of the details here that I will leave out because I just can't even get back by some of these major comments that I have. And to address the abutters letter, I think that the abutters letter is incredibly valid and raises some great points. Again, we don't have to get into the details, but they're very valid. And there's some significant work that needs to be done before this project could even be entertained by the commission.
Are you finished, Jay? Yeah, he's signed off. Very good words. Anybody else have anything to add? Trish, Kathleen, anybody?
Yes, I would just like to comment that I read all the documents in the application. I studied them, and then I went out to the site. I also share the same feelings and opinions as mentioned by every other commissioner here this evening. I was shocked to see the trees already cleared, and was wondering how that happened. So I ditto everything that everyone said.
Okay.
I would just add, Jeff and I mean, I sent him many, many emails along the way. And so I don't know, part of it was misunderstanding for my part on the flood zone. But I think within those emails, several times I said I want to do things right from the start. I obviously didn't, far from it. But I tried to clarify some things along the way. And then, you know, COVID was fun being in the hospital, but not an excuse for a distraction.
So this is Jay again. I do want to make an additional comment. So if these present conditions were presented to the commission, absence of an application, as was mentioned earlier, our stance historically would have been, and probably would be moving forward, would be to issue an enforcement action and require the applicant to provide a replication or a mitigation plan to address all of the vegetation removal. And that's still within our jurisdiction to do that. We're under a time frame, and Jeff, maybe you can jump in here a little bit to talk about time frame on enforcement action. I believe it was just brought to our attention yesterday or today. So if we were to move this hearing 2 weeks from today, we still would be within our time frame to issue an enforcement action. But I think the applicant should strongly consider the location when you go back and look at this plan and look at the location. I'm not going to do your work here, but I'll just state the obvious, that the tennis court could be clearly moved over closer to the pool. You could take down that chain link fence. You lose a little green grass area, but you have to do what you have to do. You have to keep this project out of the 50-foot buffer zone. You have to keep it away from the wildlife easement, and whatever steps you have to do to take that is what this commission is responsible for. And that's going to be my stance moving forward if I would even entertain taking a stance on the project.
Okay.
It was slid over, narrowed the court as it tucks right under the back of the solar. There's like a foot and a half based on that plan, the latest one.
Jeff, what kind of enforcement would you recommend on this? I mean, it's just devastating. And if there was any more clearing in the 50-foot buffer zone, I mean, that would just be completely wrong. As we know, wetlands and forests store world's carbon dioxide. They provide stability for wildlife. They help with climate change, the trees. They're critical importance right now. The wetlands is very dry, it appears. It must be a dry wetland because we haven't had any rain. So I don't know the conditions of the wetlands and how they are during normal times. But I mean, with this type of clearing, what would you recommend? By the way, I thought your recommendations were very good in observations. Thank you.
Thanks. So, yes. So as far as the wetland itself, so it's a wooded swamp, basically, is what it's classified as. And the last time I was out there, which I know it was in March. I think it was probably last summer or fall when Dr. Marchetti first was talking about putting in the solar panels. When I saw the wetland at that time, there was standing water in it. When I was out there the other day, it's just kind of muck. So you're right. There's no standing water in it right now.
I was down there today, Mary Ann, and it was quite dry along the edges, all right? But my only comment also is that I think you're going to have to reconsider the location of your project, Mr. Marchetti. Whether it's moving inside or whether it's moving even to that very large area in front of your house, these would be what I would call trouble-free options to get what you want. And I don't know if they're going to work or not, and it's not our job to do the engineering. But the current site is clearly something it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve what you want, all right?
First, Jeff, I think it was April 21st. I just grabbed and we had already walked the property. So I think it was before April 21st. So it was a little wet, but
yeah.
Oh.
I didn't rest.
Jeff,
Okay.
I would say at this stage, I think we need a site visit, a formal site visit with all the markings that Jay has indicated, completed, so we can all see where everything is. It's kind of hard to tell right now because it's kind of one wasteland out there. But with the stakes for the 50-foot, the 100-foot, the limits of the wildlife habitat, where the pool's going to go, and to have a technical visit there led by engineering and anybody else you want to have there. So that we're all up to snuff in what's taking place. Can you arrange that?
Eric, just to correct you, it's not a pool they're putting in, it's just
I'm sorry.
a sport court,
Sport.
just for
The
documentation.
pool's already there, sorry.
Pool's already there.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah. So Steve, do you think that you would be able to have that all that staked out at some point so we could go out and take a look?
Yes, understanding the commission's very valid concerns of the conditions out there, we can get the staking completed at the beginning of the week. And then I understand what we're looking to stake, the 50-foot buffer, the 100-foot buffer, the proposed changes to the property. We can also mark, if you want, we do have the survey, and I know that this has been discussed by a couple of the commission members, what was the pre-development or pre-alteration tree line. We did have a survey that was done prior to the trees being cut. So we do have a line that has been surveyed that we can reproduce if the commission would like to see that as well, as another point of reference, I guess, out there moving forward. And I understand the concerns regarding the positioning of things. Those are items that Mike and I can sit and talk about to work towards a more acceptable option for the commission. But we understand the first thing you need to deal with is the conditions of the site as it exists today. That is not something that was authorized by the commission.
No. Michael, one final question. You mentioned before, I think, that you had fill brought in to flatten out the area. Is that correct?
I missed part of what you said.
Yeah,
Fill?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because my audio died. I understood you mentioned there was fill that was brought in to flatten out and make a road there.
Right.
Is that correct? Do you have any indications, receipts, or whatever, how much fill was brought in? Because that's also may have to be removed.
I don't have a volume.
No. Okay. All right.
So Steve, if you were able to have your surveyors do that next week, when talking about a site visit here, when would everybody be able to do this? Just kind of going around and seeing when everybody would be available.
I'm free most any day.
As am I.
Same.
I'm free all of next week.
And for me, any day except for Friday.
I can do most days. I can't do Monday actually, but I can do most days in the morning.
How
So
about
potentially next
Wednesday,
Thursday?
9 o'clock in the morning? How does that sound?
I can't do 8 o'clock. I can do
9 o'clock?
15. I can do 8:15.
How about 9 o'clock, Marianne?
I can do 9 o'clock.
Okay.
I don't know if you need me there or need me not to be there, or I have just.
You're certain, Michael, it's your property. We look forward to any input from anyone who knows what's going on, and you're welcome to join us. We're invited. Okay?
I
This
have
is
a question.
not some blind inquisition. This is an open meeting.
I have some surgeries scheduled on patients that were delayed from COVID, and
Mr. Chairman, I would plan on attending the meeting if that would be helpful in place of Michael, assuming he's not able to attend.
Wednesday and Friday I couldn't, just scheduled orthopedic surgeries, joint replacements. And
Could we
stuff.
make it Thursday? I mean, I would like to have Mr. Marquetti have the option of joining. It's his property and his project. I can make it Thursday. Jeff?
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's what most people were agreeing to is Thursday.
Okay. Marianne, everybody?
I can.
Thursday, 9 o'clock, Jeff?
That's fine.
Mr. Marquetti?
Sure.
Great.
Steve,
And this is Jay, can I also request that if there's a survey that's already been done, while it would be great to see that staked out, but if I imagine the survey, there's an electronic copy or a hard copy of that the applicant could submit that to the agent for our review as well.
Yes, I can put it into a PDF format and email it over to Jeff's office.
Marty,
The wetlands must be marked on that document that was done by the Westport Conservation Agent.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So they were known.
I'm sorry. I forgot I am on call at the hospital, South Shore Hospital. I'm sorry about this.
Well, you have your profession. That's okay. You're doing good work. Jeff, do we need to vote on a continuance of this, or do we just decide it?
I can't remember procedurally. So yeah, I think we should vote just to cover our bases on whether to continue it, and then so we have to continue to a date certain. So Steve, do you know how much time you think you might need to have any revisions?
Well, I think a lot of that, I think a lot of that will fall out of our site walk with the commission members. I'm looking at the calendar. Your next meeting is on what day?
October 8th.
October 8th. Okay. Yeah, that's an open date for me. I'd say why don't we go for the 8th? We can at least, if nothing else, get an update on where we're at with mitigation plans and/or modified site plans. And so I would suggest we could live with that date, and then I think next week we'll determine a lot more of where we're going to go with this.
Okay.
Okay. And if you need to change it again, that's fine. We can continue it again.
Okay, thank you.
Steve,
We don't need to vote on a continuance, do we?
as far as the format for the visit, we'd like to have someone kind of run it and stage it for us, so we're not all wandering around doing different things. If that could be yourself, that would be very good.
Yeah, no, I will plan on being there next Thursday at 9 a.m. to meet with the commission members.
Okay.
And
so-
Eric, we shouldn't have to vote. We should not have to vote on a continuance if the
Okay.
applicant is agreed to a continuance. You can just continue that to October 8th.
Great. Jeff, noted, we continue this discussion till October 8th, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Marquetti.
Okay.
Jeff, we have one last subject, which is just the approval of the minutes that Angela wants us to approve the meeting on August 6th, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if you have that.
I have that. Does everyone else?
Yeah, so I had provided some comments to Angela a couple days ago. I know she's received those. I did have a few comments to one of the hearings, provided those to Angela. I assume that they have been incorporated into the new minutes. I don't know if anybody else had any
I have
further
no other comments.
issues or any. Okay.
I have a few typos, but that's about it. No other comments. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add to the minutes? If not, Eric Eisner, I'd like to move that we approve the minutes of our Concon meeting on August 6th. And we'll go through and vote on that. I lost my list. I'll start with,
Eric, were we all there?
So moved. I'll second that.
oh,
Were we all present?
I need a second. I'm sorry, Chris.
Second.
Excuse me, Chris?
Jay gave you a second, but what I'm asking is, were we all present at that meeting?
Jeff, can you answer that question?
Not right at this moment. I have to think through it.
I know off the top of my head, myself, Eric, Chris, and Marianne were present. So that makes 4 voting members. So we would at least have a quorum for voting.
Yeah, that's right.
I have in attendance Jay, Eric, Chris, Marianne, Alex, and Kathleen, all right? So, okay. Kathleen, do you want to give us your yay or nay?
Kathleen Berrigan, yay.
Okay. Eric Eisner, yay. Chris McFarland,
Chris McFarland, yay.
Jay Pimpare,
Jay Pimpara, yay.
Marianne Wetherald.
Marianne Weatherall, yeah.
Okay. It passes, I believe that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing. Thank you. Jeff, is there anything else to discuss tonight?
So yeah, the only other thing I have is Cavanero Consulting sent a request for a certificate of compliance for the town for the culvert project they did. I think it was 2014 or 15 for the culvert on Jerusalem Road, right on the inside of Bow Street.
Ah,
They put in the culvert and raised the road a few feet. They want to close that out. That work is done.
Mhm.
And so I just need the commission to vote to approve that certificate of compliance.
And it's
This is
all,
the vote.
everything is met on that?
Yep.
I'm
There was
sorry,
really no work other than raise the road and redo reconstruct the culvert.
And you want us to vote alphabetically, Chris? Jeff?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Jeff, what is the project location again of the project site?
So this was
The
the
title?
culvert on this was the culvert on Jerusalem Road, which is right on the
Right.
inside of Bow Street.
Yep, no, I know it well. I just was gonna, I know it, thank you. I was just gonna make a motion, but I didn't know the title of it or what it was.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So it's called the Jerusalem Road Culvert Project
And the motion is to close that project
to issue a certificate of compliance. Yes.
issue, okay. Marianne Weatherall recommends, moves to close the, and issue a certificate of compliance on the Jerusalem Road culvert project.
Seconded.
Okay, you can vote on that. Kathleen Berrigan,
Kathleen Berrigan, yay.
Eric Eisner, yay. Chris McFarland,
McFarland, yay.
Trish Grady, yes, Trish Grady, you're there. Sorry.
Yay.
Marianne Weatherald,
Yay.
Jay Pimpare.
Jay Pimpara, yay.
Okay, so it passes, what's that, 6-0, Jeff.
Thank you. The only other thing I wanted to add to was I sent everybody an email to their town website and to Trisha's Yahoo, but so I think all of you guys will remember the 589 Jerusalem project where they want to remove the invasive species and replant with natives. That's coming up again at the next meeting on October 8th. They have invited us to view the property with Steve Ivis, who is going to be working with them on Tuesday, the 22nd. So this coming Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Steve Ivis is going to be there to potentially, whoever shows up, show us the property, give us a in the field, show us what is what, basically. So they invited us to go out to that. So if anybody can make that, I think that may be helpful to actually see the site before the hearing on the 8th. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. The only thing, though, if everybody...
The issue, Jeff, is what in terms of the work, whether it succeeded or not so far, or?
Well, we did it in sections. I think we were looking at, before we allow them to do a full section 3, we wanted them to do it in parts, maybe it was 3A, I think it was.
Right. So they want to show us the current conditions and whatever progress they have been making before the hearing on the 8th. Whoever can go,
on the 8th for?
What?
What is the hearing on the 8th for?
They're going to update us on the current conditions and probably propose to move forward with another phase of their project.
Yeah, if you remember, I think this was phase 3 of the project. We approved phase 1 and phase 2. As part of phase 3, there were 3 specific areas, area 1, area 2, and area 3. I think they were in like 25-foot increments.
Yeah.
They were along the bank area. We did approve area 1. One of the issues is that, and this goes back to, I don't know, April or May timeframe, earlier this year, but we did not approve, we did not take a stance on area 2 and area 3. We didn't approve it. We basically just approved area 1. So what we needed to do is go back and continue the hearing to a later date, which we did a couple weeks ago, and reevaluate area 2 and area 3. Now, this date of October was pretty much just arbitrarily picked. We could have pushed it off a year from now. So, not to deliberate on the issue, but come October 8th, based on the site visit, commissioners may choose to look at, see if whether or not they need more time as an option for plants to grow, etc. So I think, again, they will be going back to area 2 and area 3. The proposal was to remove the, I forget the name of the trees there, the black locust. Black locust, and replace them with smaller shrubs, and they'll probably tell you a little bit out there. If you look at area 1, area 1 will basically, area 2 and area 3 will look like what area 1 looks like out there right now, if it were to be approved. So just to keep them strictly talking facts here. But again, the commission did not take it. We let them do area 1, but we did not take a stance on area 2 and area 3.
I think there was some question, Jay, about wanting to see that area 1 is successful before we allow them to rip up everything else. Do you understand? A sense of show us what you can do and prove to us that your proposal and your technique is viable. And there was some question as to whether that was going to work or not. So going back, I think it's important that we update ourselves.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think one of the questions, and again, not to deliberate, but just a question that everyone would need to ask themselves is, do you think that whatever 4 or 5 months of a time frame is sufficient enough time to make a full evaluation? We had talked in the past about going through 1 or 2 or even 3 growing seasons, and we've barely gone through 1 growing season. So, questions to ask yourself would be whether or not you feel that the area would thrive over the course of a harsh New England winter here, and we've yet to see that. So I won't talk any more about it, but those are just questions you need to ask yourself. So I think a site visit would be in everyone's best interest to go out there. And if you can't make it on Tuesday, you can, everybody, I feel I go by that place all the time. You feel free to go by on your own and take a look at the area if you can't make it on Tuesday.
So
I think
when is the scheduled meeting Tuesday? When?
9:30.
9:30?
Well,
This coming
that's what
Tuesday?
they haven't. Yeah, they've invited us to go out at that point in time. We don't have to accept it. If there's an alternative time the commission feels would be better off, then propose that new time.
Yeah, if anybody, if the majority of people can't make it at that time, then, I can write them back and with some suggestions, and maybe we could coordinate something where we could get more people actually there at once.
Yeah, if
Um,
I try to attend anything at like 9 or 9:30 is always going to be hard because I've got to get into my office by 9 typically. So I can make exceptions. Like I'll definitely make the exception for Thursday, but that'll be 2 in the same week. I can do it.
Jeff, I have no problem in the afternoon. Why don't we make it at 4:30? Is that a problem for anybody? Maybe one has to come home a bit earlier from work, I guess, but at least it'd be easier for you, Trish.
Unfortunately, Eric, that probably isn't much easier either. But I can swing it next week probably. And if I can't, I can go separate. I don't want to speak for
Okay.
everybody.
9:30 then?
Yep.
I'll be there.
And Trish, if you wanted to coordinate with either with me or with Jeff or any other member, just one member, that's fine to do that as well if you want to. Or you could go over on your own, or again coordinate with Jeff at a time that's reasonable for you to go out there and even over the, well, maybe not this weekend, but I'm around quite a bit if I ever get out of this hospital.
We'll look at soon.
What's the address of that property?
It's 589 Jerusalem.
It's the big 3-apartment condo on the right, about half a mile down.
Right, I remember it.
Yeah. But Jay, I think your point's correct. After 4 or 5 months, how much can you really tell about the durability of the horticultural effort? We can see what's gone so far after a dry summer, but is it going to survive the winter rains and all that? I don't know.
Yeah, again, that's a question you have to ask yourself, and that's a question that the commission can further discuss on October 8th. But it's a valid point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Agreed.
Anything else, Jeff? Or
No, I don't have anything else.
anyone want to move to close the meeting?
I just wanted to alert you that there's a MAC class coming up that I thought was good on open space planning and protection techniques on the 22nd as well, from 6 to 8:30. There's some good classes coming up. If you
Open space planning.
open space planning and protection techniques. Then the next one's on climate solutions. The next one's on New England plant community.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And hopefully we have resolved the issue with registration. Marianne, hopefully you haven't had to pay out of your pocket on that one. I thanks to Angela, who's hopefully addressed that issue moving forward, so that we won't have any more issues with payments.
Right. I haven't tried again. I was motivated that hour.
Yeah, I would reach out to Lindsay again, and I think the situation has been addressed earlier this week. So reach out to Lindsay, and we should be all set now.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff.
Yes.
Yep. Are we all set?
Yes.
Well, are there any 48-hour issues?
No, I don't think so.
Just FYI, a little quick update from myself. On September 22nd, the select board will be making the appointments for our 2 associate members. There are 3 applicants. We are, along with there's a couple select board members who are going to be doing a Zoom interview of the 3 applicants on Monday evening, and we'll be making the selections on Tuesday, the 22nd. So at our next meeting, which obviously is October 8th, there will be 2 new faces and 2 new names as
Great.
one-year associates on the commission.
So, Jay, our Monday and Tuesday are both on Zoom?
The Monday is a private interview session on Zoom, just with the select board, a couple of select board members, and the 3 applicants. They're like 15-minute interviews. It's just a little screening. If you remember, what we've all done in the past is gone in front of the select board, and they've asked a couple of general questions about why you want to be on the commission, et cetera, a little bit about yourself. So they're doing that kind of behind closed doors, which I believe is a very good thing and not in the public eye, so that nobody feels embarrassed about potentially not being selected for whatever reason. But they will be making the announcements at the public hearing on Tuesday evening, which is open to the public.
Okay.
Okay. One last thing, I guess, because I'm the conservation liaison for Open Space Committee. Open Space Committee is having a cleanup day this Saturday, so I'm passing that along.
Tell me, are you planning Earth Day celebrations also?
No.
No.
Well, there may be considered, but this is an independent cleanup
Okay.
to beautify Cohasset.
You're doing a good job.
And that, Eric, well done this evening. Thank you for the last minute jump in chairing the meeting. Much appreciated.
I have to go and open my IPA right now.
Yeah, well, I hope you have IPAs ready, or we will most likely be doing a little bit of a reorg on October 8th. I know that some people, I know Marianne has stated, obviously, she's on open space. What other, Eric, you are on what committee?
CBC.
Yeah, CBC, and I believe Chris is the liaison to the Harbor Committee.
Mhm.
So, those are 3 positions that if people want to remain, we will take voting into consideration for those positions, and even potentially chair, vice chair, and secretary. We'll have a further discussion on that as well.
Okay.
Okay.
But you did a fine job tonight, Eric. Thank you.
Okay. I hope you get home at a good hour.
I hope I get home by Monday. I hope I get home by the site visit on Tuesday.
Oh, jeez.
Just like, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks, Jay.
Luck.
Anyone want to move to close? Anybody?
Move to close the meeting.
Second,
Second that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And good
we have
night.
to vote.
Oh,
All
vote.
those in favor?
All
Okay.
those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi, Marianne.
Aye.
Gerald.
Everybody. Good night.
Disagree.
Aye. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.